Blood pooled beneath Lena's ribs as she lay crumpled in the alley, skull ringing from where the second man's boot had connected with her temple. She couldn't remember their faces anymore, just the words they'd spit before leaving her to die. Tell Moretti his protection means nothing. But Raphael Moretti didn't even know her name. She was just the maid who scrubbed his floors. As sirens wailed in the distance and rain soaked through her uniform, Lena realized the cruelest truth. She was about to die for a man who'd never once looked her in the eye. If you want to see how an invisible woman becomes the one thing a king can't afford to lose, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain started just after midnight. Lena felt it through the thin fabric of her jacket as she stepped out of the service entrance of the Moretti estate, her shoulders aching from another 14-hour shift that had bled into 16. Her hands smelled like bleach and lemon polish. Her lower back throbbed where she'd spent 2 hours on her knees scrubbing the grout in Raphael Moretti's marble bathroom, the one with the rainfall shower she'd never use and heated floors she'd never walk across barefoot. She pulled her hood up and started walking. The subway station was 11 blocks away. 11 blocks through a neighborhood where the streetlights worked and the buildings had doormen and nobody ever asked if you were lost. Lena kept her head down and her pace steady, the way she always did. Invisible. That was the trick. Be so unremarkable that eyes slid right past you. It had worked for 14 months. Tonight, it didn't. She was 6 blocks from the estate when the black sedan pulled up alongside her, slow and deliberate. Lena's heart kicked against her ribs, but she didn't break stride. Didn't look, just kept walking like she hadn't noticed, like maybe they'd made a mistake. The car stopped. 2 doors opened. Lena Hart? She should have run. Should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did, which was freeze like prey that knows it's already caught. The first man was broad-shouldered, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The second was thinner, wiry, with dead eyes that didn't blink enough. Neither wore masks. That told Lena everything she needed to know about whether they planned to let her walk away. "You work for Moretti," Scarface said. Not a question. Lena's mouth went dry. "I clean his house, that's all. I'm not involved in anything. I just clean." "Yeah?" Deadeyes tilted his head. "That's funny, because we've been watching you come and go for 3 weeks now, and you sure do spend a lot of time inside those walls. I work long shifts. I need the money, please. I don't know anything about his business. I swear to you, I'm nobody." "You're somebody enough," Scarface said, and his fist caught her across the jaw before she could raise her hands. Lena hit the wet pavement hard, tasting copper. Her vision swam. She tried to crawl, but a boot slammed into her ribs and the air left her lungs in a strangled gasp. "This is a message," Deadeyes said, kneeling beside her. His breath smelled like cigarettes. "You tell Moretti his protection doesn't reach as far as he thinks. You tell him Constantine is done being patient." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The next kick caught her in the stomach, and the one after that in the kidney. Pain exploded through her spine, white-hot and nauseating. They didn't stop. Somewhere in the haze of agony, Lena heard herself making sounds she didn't recognize. Broken, animal whimpers that might have been pleas. Her fingers scrabbled uselessly against the concrete, searching for something to hold on to, some way to make it stop. And then it did. Not because they showed mercy, because headlights flooded the street and tires screeched, and suddenly there were shouts and the sharp crack of gunfire. Lena's vision tunneled. She was aware of movement around her, bodies hitting the ground, engines revving, voices barking orders in Italian. But it all felt distant, like she was watching it happen to someone else. Strong hands rolled her onto her back. "Jesus Christ," a man's voice said. "Get the car, now!" Lena tried to focus on his face, but the darkness was pulling at her, thick and insistent. She caught a glimpse of sharp cheekbones, dark eyes, and something that might have been anger or fear or both. "Stay with me," the voice commanded. "Don't you fucking die on me. Do you hear me? Don't die." But Lena was already gone. Sit. She woke to pain. It lived in her ribs, her spine, her skull. It radiated through every muscle and bone, turning each breath into an act of will. Lena's eyes fluttered open to soft light and a ceiling she didn't recognize, high, coffered, expensive. Not a hospital. Panic spiked through her chest. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as her ribs screamed in protest. Easy. A woman's voice, firm but not unkind. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and bruising that would make a prizefighter wince. Moving is a bad idea. Lena turned her head, slowly, and found herself looking at a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen worse than this. She wore scrubs and held a tablet, and something about the steadiness in her eyes made Lena's throat tighten. Where am I? The Moretti Estate. East Wing, 2nd floor. I'm Dr. Castellano. I've been monitoring you for the past 18 hours. 18 hours. My brother, Lena croaked. He's alone. I have to. Your brother is here, Dr. Castellano said, and that stopped Lena cold. Mr. Moretti had him brought in last night. He's 2 doors down, comfortable and currently asleep. He doesn't know what happened to you yet. I was told to let you decide when and how to tell him. Lena's brain struggled to process that. Rafael Moretti, the man she'd worked for in silence for over a year, the man who'd never spoken more than 3 words to her at a time, had brought her brother here? I don't understand. You were attacked because you work in this house, the doctor said quietly. Mr. Moretti considers that his responsibility. He's not in the habit of letting his people get hurt without consequences. His people. As if Lena had ever been anything more than a name on a payroll, a body scrubbing floors and washing windows and staying out of sight. I need to see Jamie. After you eat something and I check your vitals again, you lost a fair amount of blood. You're not walking anywhere until I'm satisfied you won't collapse. Lena wanted to argue, but her body was already betraying her, exhaustion dragging at her eyelids despite the fear still buzzing through her veins. She let the doctor work, blood pressure cuff, penlight in her eyes, gentle fingers probing her ribs, and tried not to think about what came next. She'd been beaten for working here. That meant she couldn't come back, couldn't work, couldn't pay the bills that were already drowning her, the medical debt from Jamie's accident that had swallowed her whole life for the past 2 years. She was ruined. The thought sat in her chest like a stone. Rafael Moretti heard about the girl before he saw her. He was in his study when Dimitri knocked. 2 sharp raps that meant business, not socializing. Rafael didn't look up from the contract he was reviewing, just gestured for him to enter. We found her, Dimitri said. Barely. 2 of Constantine's men had her in an alley off Lexington. They were sending a message. That got Rafael's attention. He set down his pen and looked at his head of security, taking in the tight line of his jaw and the blood on his cuff. The men? Dead. Both of them, I made sure. And the girl? Alive. Barely. Dr. Castellano says she'll recover, but it was close. They worked her over pretty thoroughly. Rafael leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. He didn't ask which girl. There was only one person on his household staff that Constantine would bother with, the maid who came and went like clockwork, the one with the tired eyes and the second-hand coat who never met anyone's gaze and never asked questions. He'd noticed her exactly 3 times in 14 months. Once, when she'd knocked over a vase while cleaning and looked so stricken he'd almost felt bad for her. Once when he'd passed her in the hall, and she'd pressed herself against the wall to let him by, like she was trying to disappear into the plaster. And once, late at night, when he'd found her asleep in the library with her cheek pressed to an open textbook and dark circles under her eyes that spoke of exhaustion so bone-deep it might be permanent. He hadn't known her name until Dimitri said it. Lena Hart. Where is she now? East Wing. The doctor's with her. She woke up about an hour ago, asked about her brother immediately. I had him brought in, like you said. He's the one with the spinal injury? Dimitri nodded. Car accident 2 years ago. She's been his sole caretaker since. Works 3 jobs according to the background check. Rafael absorbed that in silence. 3 jobs. One of them scrubbing his floors for minimum wage while he lived in a house with more rooms than he could name. I want a detail on her, he said. And the brother, 24 hours. No exceptions. Already done. Constantine's going to retaliate for the 2 we took out. Let him try. Raphael's voice dropped into something colder, sharper. He put hands on someone under my roof. That requires an answer. With respect, she's a maid. She's mine. The words came out harder than Raphael intended, and he saw Dimitri's eyebrows rise fractionally. Anyone who works in this house, who relies on me for their livelihood, is under my protection. Constantine knows that. This was a test. If I let it slide, every two-bit hustler in the city will think they can take shots at my people. Dmitri knew better than to argue. Understood. What do you want done? Find out where the order came from. I want names, locations, and leverage. And I want to know why Constantine thinks he can afford to start a war over territory we settled 6 months ago. On it. After Dmitri left, Raphael sat alone in the silence of his study, staring at the city lights beyond the window. 14 stories below, the streets of Manhattan glittered like a circuit board, all cold electricity and no warmth. He thought about the girl, Lena, and the way she'd looked that one night in the library, small and exhausted and utterly alone. He thought about the fact that she'd nearly died tonight for the crime of cleaning his bathroom. And he thought about the last time someone under his protection had been hurt because of him, and the promises he'd made standing over their grave. Raphael Moretti didn't make the same mistake twice. Lena saw her brother for the first time in 36 hours and nearly broke down. Jamie was propped up in a bed that looked like it cost more than their apartment, surrounded by pillows and blankets, his wheelchair parked neatly beside him. He looked better than he had in months, rested, clean, not gray with pain and exhaustion. "Lena," his voice cracked. "What the hell happened?" She'd rehearsed what to say. Practiced keeping it vague, keeping him from worrying. But the moment she saw him, the story she'd prepared crumbled. "I got mugged," she said, which wasn't technically a lie. "Wrong place, wrong time. It's okay. I'm okay." Jamie's eyes, so much like their mother's, it sometimes hurt to look at him, narrowed. "You're in Raphael Moretti's house. That's not okay. That's insane. What aren't you telling me? It happened near the estate. His people found me. They brought me here because—" She faltered. "Because why? Because Raphael Moretti gave a damn about the woman who cleaned his floors? That didn't make sense. Because I work for him. He considers it his responsibility." "You clean for him. You're not—" "Lena, you don't owe him anything. We should leave." "And go where?" The exhaustion she'd been fighting crashed over her all at once. Back to the apartment with the broken heat and the neighbors who deal meth? Back to me working myself into the ground while you sit alone all day because we can't afford help? "Jamie, I can barely afford your medications. I'm drowning. We both are." She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't meant to let the desperation show, but it was out now, raw and true, and Jamie's face went pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Lena. This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Don't." She reached for his hand, ignoring the pain in her ribs. "Don't you dare blame yourself for some drunk running a red light. You didn't ask for this. Neither of us did. But you're paying for it. We're surviving it. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped, both of them pretending they weren't terrified of what came next. Raphael came to see her on the third day. Lena was sitting up in bed, reading a book Dr. Castellano had brought her, when the door opened and he walked in without knocking. She recognized him immediately. It was impossible not to. Raphael Moretti looked exactly like the photograph she'd seen in the handful of times she'd glanced at newspapers left lying around the house, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of face that belonged on Roman statues. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they were almost black. He looked at her the way you'd look at a broken piece of machinery you were deciding whether to fix or replace. "Miss Hart." His voice was lower than she'd expected, rough around the edges like gravel and silk. "Mr. Moretti." Lena set the book down, suddenly aware of how she must look, bruised, pale, wearing borrowed clothes in his guest room. "I wanted to thank you for everything, the doctor, the room, bringing Jamie here. You didn't have to do any of it. You were attacked because you work for me. That makes it my responsibility." The same line Dr. Castellano had used. Lena wondered if he'd told everyone to say it or if he genuinely believed it. "I understand if you need to let me go," she said quietly. "I don't want to cause problems for you. If my being here puts your household at risk—" "You're not going anywhere," she blinked. "I'm sorry? Raphael moved further into the room, and Lena noticed the way he carried himself, controlled, deliberate, like every step was a calculated decision. He stopped at the foot of her bed, hands in his pockets, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The men who hurt you are dead, he said. The man who gave the order will be dealt with. You'll continue working here with a significant raise and a security detail. Your brother will remain in the East Wing for as long as necessary. Dr. Castellano will oversee his care. Lena's brain stalled. I can't. Mr. Moretti, I can't afford. You're not being asked to afford anything. Consider it part of your employment benefits. I clean your house. People don't get benefits like that for scrubbing floors. People who work for me and nearly die because of it do. His tone didn't invite argument. You have medical debt, student loans, rent on an apartment in a neighborhood that should be condemned. I'm aware of your financial situation, Miss Hart. It's being addressed. Horror and humiliation flooded through her in equal measure. You had me investigated. I had you protected. The investigation was a byproduct. If you're going to be targeted because of your association with me, I need to know who might use your vulnerabilities as leverage. I'm not associated with you. I work for you. There's a difference. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read, gone before she could name it. Not anymore. Constantine made you my business when he put his hands on you. That changes things. I don't want to be your business. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, frustration overriding caution. I want to work, pay my bills, take care of my brother, and stay invisible. That's all I've ever wanted. You don't get to decide I'm under your protection like I'm some kind of asset to manage. Raphael's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Something that might have been surprise or interest, or both. You'd rather go back to working 3 jobs and drowning in debt than accept help? I'd rather not owe a man like you anything I can't pay back. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. A man like me, Raphael repeated softly. You think you know what kind of man I am? Lena met his gaze, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. I know what people say. I know what kind of business you run, and I know that people who owe you favors don't usually get to walk away clean. Smart, he said, and there was something almost approving in his tone. You're right to be cautious, but you're wrong about one thing. What's that? You don't owe me anything. What I'm offering isn't a loan. It's a consequence of your employment. You were hurt on my watch, and I'm correcting that. If it makes you feel better, consider it a liability issue. I don't want you suing me for inadequate security. It was bullshit, and they both knew it, but it gave Lena an out, a way to accept without feeling like she was selling herself into some kind of indentured servitude. I can still work? She asked carefully. If you want to, though I'm told you should rest for at least another week. I can't afford to rest for a week. You can now. Your paychecks will continue, and when you're ready to return, you'll find your hours adjusted and your responsibilities limited. No more 16-hour days. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need his charity, that she'd been taking care of herself and Jamie just fine before he decided to play savior. But the truth was, she hadn't been fine. She'd been drowning. And this man, this dangerous, complicated man whose world she didn't understand, was throwing her a lifeline. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Raphael nodded once, then turned to leave. He was at the door when Lena spoke again. Why? He paused, hand on the doorknob. Why what? Why do you care? You didn't even know my name 3 days ago. Raphael looked back at her, and for just a moment the mask slipped. She saw something raw beneath it, something that looked like old pain and older guilt. Because I should have, he said, and because no one else will. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, and Lena was left alone with the echo of his words and the unsettling realization that Raphael Moretti might be more than the monster everyone said he was. Or maybe that just made him more dangerous. The days blurred together after that. Dr. Castellano checked on her twice daily, monitoring her healing with the kind of thoroughness that spoke of real concern, not just professional obligation. Jamie spent hours in her room, the two of them talking about everything and nothing, avoiding the elephant in the room that was their bizarre new living situation. Security guards rotated through the hallway outside, always two, always armed, always polite, but distant, and Raphael stayed away. Lena told herself she was relieved, that his absence made things easier, less complicated. She didn't need him checking on her, didn't need to navigate the strange tension that had hung in the air during their one conversation. But she noticed his absence anyway. On the 5th day, she was finally cleared to walk around. Dr. Castellano warned her to take it slow, not to push too hard, and Lena nodded dutifully while planning to ignore every word. She'd been lying in bed for 5 days. She was going stir-crazy. Jamie was in physical therapy, something Dr. Castellano had arranged with a specialist who apparently made house calls for the right price. So Lena ventured out alone, moving slowly through hallways she'd only ever seen while carrying cleaning supplies. The east wing was quieter than the main house, more private. Lena passed doors that were closed, others that stood ajar, revealing glimpses of rooms that looked untouched, museum perfect, and utterly lifeless. She was about to turn back when she heard voices. "Can't keep her here indefinitely. It's a security risk." "She's not a risk. She's a witness. Constantine knows she can identify his men. His men are dead. His organization isn't. You know how this works, Dimitri. She's a loose end. Keeping her close keeps her safe." Lena froze. She knew she should walk away, that eavesdropping on Raphael Moretti's private conversations was a monumentally stupid idea. But her feet wouldn't move, and when Constantine decides safe isn't good enough, Dimitri's voice was hard. "When he decides to make an example anyway, what then? Then I make sure he regrets it. By starting a war over a maid? By finishing what he started when he put hands on someone under my roof?" Raphael's voice dropped lower, colder. "I've let Constantine push boundaries for 6 months because I was trying to avoid bloodshed. That ends now. He wants to test me? Fine. But he's going to learn that some lines you don't cross. She's not worth it." The silence that followed was so heavy Lena could feel it through the door. "Get out," Raphael said quietly. "Boss, get out." Footsteps approached the door. Lena stumbled backward, heart hammering, but she wasn't fast enough. The door swung open and Dimitri nearly walked into her. He stopped, eyes narrowing. "Miss Hart, I got lost. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "How much did you hear?" Lena's mouth went dry. Lying seemed like a bad idea, but telling the truth seemed worse. "Enough to know I'm causing problems I didn't ask for." "You should go back to your room." "I should leave," Lena said. "I should take Jamie and go back to our apartment and let you people handle your business without—" "Lena!" Raphael appeared in the doorway behind Dimitri, and the look on his face stopped her mid-sentence. "My office," he said. "Now." It wasn't a request. Dimitri stepped aside. Lena walked past him on legs that felt unsteady, very aware of how small she was next to both men, how fragile her ribs still felt, how completely out of her depth she'd become. Raphael's office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. He closed the door behind them and gestured to a chair. "Sit." Lena sat. Raphael leaned against his desk, arms crossed, studying her with that same unsettling intensity. "How much did you actually hear?" "That I'm a security risk. That keeping me here might start a war. That your head of security thinks I'm not worth it." She lifted her chin. "He's right. I'm not. That's not your call to make." "It's my life. I think that makes it exactly my call. Your life became my concern the moment Constantine's men put you in a hospital bed. You don't get to opt out of my protection just because it's inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" Lena laughed, and it came out bitter. "Mr. Moretti, I'm a 26-year-old woman with a high school diploma and $50,000 in medical debt. I'm nobody. Starting a war over me is insane. I'm not starting a war, I'm finishing one. There's a difference." "Not to me." Raphael pushed off the desk and moved closer, and Lena had to fight the urge to shrink back. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You want to know why I'm doing this?" he asked quietly. "You want the real answer?" "Yes. Because 6 years ago, I made a promise to someone I cared about that I would protect the people who worked for me, that I wouldn't let my business bleed into their lives, that I would keep them safe." His jaw tightened. "And then I broke that promise. Someone got hurt because I was careless, because I didn't see a threat until it was too late. They died because of me." Lena's breath caught. "So when Dimitri tells me you're not worth the risk, what I hear is that I should make the same mistake twice, that I should let another person suffer because protecting them is too complicated, too dangerous. Too expensive. And I can't do that. I won't. The raw honesty in his voice knocked something loose in Lena's chest. She saw it then, the guilt he carried, the weight of old mistakes and older ghosts. Rafael Moretti wasn't protecting her because she mattered to him personally. He was protecting her because someone else once didn't, and he was still trying to make amends. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I'm sorry you lost someone like that. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. It's not your fault." "It is, completely." He stepped back, putting distance between them again. "But that doesn't change what happens next. You and your brother stay here until the situation with Constantine is resolved. You don't leave without security, you don't take risks, and you let me handle the business side of things. Can you do that?" Lena wanted to say no, wanted to grab Jamie and run and pretend none of this had happened, but she thought about the apartment with the broken heat, the bills piling up, the exhaustion that had been eating her alive for 2 years. And she thought about the way Rafael looked at her, not like a problem to solve, but like a person worth protecting. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Rafael nodded once. "Good. Now go rest. You look like hell." It should have been insulting, but somehow it just made her smile. "You're not great at comforting speeches, are you?" "I'm better at threats." "I believe that." She made it to the door before he spoke again. "Lena?" She turned back. "For the record," Rafael said, meeting her eyes, "you're worth it." And then he dismissed her with a wave of his hand, already turning back to whatever dangerous business he'd been handling before she interrupted. Lena left before he could see the way his words made her throat tight and her eyes sting, before she could start believing them. That conversation stayed with Lena longer than it should have. She found herself replaying Rafael's words at odd moments. While Jamie's physical therapist worked him through exercises that made him grit his teeth, while she ate meals that appeared on trays outside her door 3 times a day, while she lay awake at night listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house too large and too quiet. "You're worth it." He'd said it like he meant it, like her value wasn't something she had to earn or prove. Nobody had ever said that to her before. Not like that. By the 7th day, Lena was climbing the walls. Her ribs still ached when she moved wrong, but the sharp agony had dulled to something manageable. Dr. Castellano had cleared her for light activity, which Lena immediately translated as permission to stop being useless. She found the kitchen at 6 in the morning when the house was still sleeping and the staff hadn't arrived yet. It was a massive space, all gleaming stainless steel and marble countertops, the kind of kitchen you saw in magazines. Lena stood in the doorway for a moment, feeling like an intruder, before her practical side kicked in and reminded her that she'd scrubbed this floor on her hands and knees at least a dozen times. She had as much right to be here as anyone. She was elbow-deep in dishwater, washing the few plates she and Jamie had used the night before, when a voice behind her made her jump. "You're supposed to be resting." Lena spun around, soapy hands dripping, and found Rafael standing in the doorway. He was dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him, dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No tie. Hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his fingers through it. He looked tired. Human. "I've been resting for a week," Lena said, turning back to the sink. "I was going stir-crazy. So you decided to do dishes at 6 in the morning. I decided to do something useful. There's a difference." She heard him move closer, felt his presence at her back like heat. When she glanced over her shoulder, he was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You don't have to earn your place here, Lena. I'm not trying to earn anything. I'm trying to feel less like a charity case." She rinsed a plate and set it in the drying rack with more force than necessary. "I'm not good at being taken care of. I'm the one who does the taking care of." "I noticed." Something in his tone made her pause. She shut off the water and turned to face him, drying her hands on a towel. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rafael studied her for a long moment, and Lena had the uncomfortable sensation of being seen in a way she wasn't used to. Really seen, not just looked at. "You work 3 jobs to pay for your brother's medical care," he said quietly. "You put yourself through night classes while working full-time. You sleep 4 hours a night if you're lucky. You don't ask for help. You don't take breaks. And you run yourself into the ground because you think that's what strength looks like." Lena's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me." I know you nearly died because you were too exhausted to notice a tail. I know your body is so used to running on empty that you didn't even realize how close to collapse you were until someone forced you to stop. He pushed off the counter, moving closer. I know what it looks like when someone's drowning and too proud to reach for the life raft. I'm not proud. I'm realistic. Nobody's going to save me. That's not how the world works. It is in my house. The conviction in his voice startled her. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that his money and his power couldn't fix everything. But standing there in his kitchen at dawn, looking at a man who'd turned his entire world upside down to protect someone he barely knew, she couldn't make the words come. Why do you care? She asked instead, hating how small her voice sounded. I already told you. Not the guilt answer, the real one. Raphael's expression shifted, something guarded sliding behind his eyes. For a moment, Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, because I understand what it's like to carry weight that isn't yours. To feel responsible for things you can't control. And I know how it destroys you piece by piece until there's nothing left but the obligation. The raw honesty in his words knocked the air from her lungs. Someone needed to tell you it's okay to put it down, Raphael continued, even for a little while, even if it feels wrong. Lena's throat went tight. She looked away, blinking hard against the sting in her eyes. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who... She stopped herself, but it was too late. Who what? Raphael's voice had gone soft, dangerous. Say it. You're not the one who will be left with nothing when this is over, Lena finished. When you get bored of playing hero and I have to go back to my real life, I can't afford to get used to this. Any of it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Raphael moved closer, and Lena's back hit the counter. He stopped just short of crowding her, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne and something underneath it that was just him, smoke and cedar and danger. You think I'm playing? He asked quietly. I think you're used to fixing things, and I think when there's nothing left to fix, you'll move on. You're wrong. Am I? Raphael's hand came up and Lena's breath caught, but he didn't touch her, just braced his palm against the counter beside her hip, boxing her in without actually trapping her. I don't do temporary, Lena. When I commit to something, I see it through, and I committed to keeping you safe the moment I pulled you out of that alley. That doesn't have an expiration date. Everything has an expiration date. Not this. The certainty in his voice made something crack open in Lena's chest. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it terrified her. I don't know how to trust that, she whispered. Then don't. Not yet. Raphael's eyes held hers, dark and intense and utterly focused. Just stop fighting me long enough to let yourself heal. Lena opened her mouth to respond, but footsteps in the hallway broke the moment. Raphael stepped back smoothly, putting professional distance between them just as one of the kitchen staff appeared in the doorway. The older woman stopped short, taking in the scene with wide eyes. Mr. Moretti, I didn't realize you'd be up so early. I couldn't sleep, Raphael said easily, his tone shifting into something cooler, more distant. Miss Hart was kind enough to keep me company. I'll take my coffee in the study. Of course, sir. Raphael left without another glance at Lena, and she was left standing by the sink with her heart racing and her thoughts in chaos, wondering what the hell had just happened. Jamie noticed the change first. You're different, he said 3 days later, watching Lena pace the length of his room like a caged animal. I'm fine. You're agitated. You've checked your phone 6 times in the last 10 minutes, and you keep looking at the door like you're expecting someone. Lena stopped pacing. I'm not expecting anyone. Liar. Jamie grinned, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. Does this have anything to do with the fact that Raphael Moretti had breakfast sent up to both our rooms this morning with a note saying to let him know if we needed anything? Heat flooded Lena's cheeks. He's just being a good employer. Employers don't send handwritten notes, and they definitely don't rearrange their entire household to accommodate their maid's injured brother. He feels responsible, that's all. Uh-huh. Jamie's smile turned knowing. And that's why you've been jumpier than a cat on a hot roof ever since you talked to him in the kitchen the other day? Lena had made the mistake of telling Jamie about that conversation. Not all of it. Definitely not the part where Raphael had crowded her against the counter and looked at her like she was something worth protecting, but enough that Jamie had clearly filled in the blanks himself. There's nothing going on, Lena said firmly. He's my boss. That's it. Your boss who looks at you like, Jamie. Fine, fine. He held up his hands in surrender, but the grin didn't fade. But for the record, I think you're allowed to be interested in someone. You know that, right? You're not required to be a martyr forever. I'm not a martyr. I'm realistic. You're scared. The accusation hit harder because it was true. Lena was terrified, of hoping for something she couldn't have, of trusting someone who lived in a world she didn't understand, of letting herself want things that would only hurt more when they disappeared. Maybe, she admitted quietly, but scared is smart. Scared keeps you from making mistakes you can't take back. Jamie's expression softened. It also keeps you from living. Before Lena could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. The door opened and Dmitri stepped inside, his face grim. Miss Hart, you need to come with me. Lena's stomach dropped. What's wrong? Is it Raphael? He's fine, but we have a situation and he wants you somewhere secure until it's handled. What kind of situation? The kind where Konstantin just made another move and we're not taking chances. Dmitri's tone left no room for argument. Your brother stays here with a guard. You come with me. Now. Jamie reached for Lena's hand and she squeezed back, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. It's okay. I'll be fine. Lena, I'll be fine, she repeated, more firmly. Then she followed Dmitri out into the hallway where two armed guards fell into step beside them. They moved through the house quickly, taking corridors Lena had never seen before. The estate was a maze, and she'd only ever navigated the main halls in the east wing. Now they descended stairs into what looked like a basement level, all concrete and fluorescent lighting and doors that required keycards to open. Dmitri stopped at one and pressed his palm to a scanner. The lock clicked, and he ushered Lena inside. It was a safe room. Lena recognized it immediately. Reinforced walls, no windows, a single exit. There was a couch, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom. Everything you'd need to wait out a crisis in uncomfortable safety. How long? She asked. However long it takes. Boss's orders. Dmitri's expression softened fractionally. There's food in the fridge, water in the cooler. If you need anything, use the intercom. We'll let you know when it's clear. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone with her racing thoughts and the sick certainty that whatever was happening upstairs, Raphael was in the middle of it. She lasted 2 hours before the walls started closing in. Lena tried to distract herself, made tea she didn't drink, flipped through magazines without reading them, paced until her ribs protested. But all she could think about was Raphael facing down Konstantin's people, putting himself in danger because of her, because she'd become his responsibility and his weakness all at once. When the intercom crackled to life, she nearly jumped out of her skin. Miss Hart. It was Dmitri's voice, rough with exhaustion. You're clear to come up. Boss wants to see you. Is he hurt? A pause. He's alive. That's what matters. Lena's blood turned to ice. She was out the door before Dmitri finished speaking, taking the stairs 2 at a time despite the pain in her ribs. One of the guards tried to keep pace, but she left him behind, navigating by instinct and adrenaline until she burst into the main hallway. Dmitri was waiting. Second floor, west wing, third door on the left. Doctors with him. Lena ran. She found Raphael in what looked like a private sitting room. Dr. Castellano bent over him with a medical kit spread across the coffee table. There was blood, not a lot, but enough to make Lena's vision tunnel, and Raphael's shirt was torn at the shoulder where someone had clearly taken a knife to him. Jesus, Lena breathed. Raphael's head snapped up. You're supposed to be in the safe room. Dmitri said I could come up. What the hell happened? A conversation got heated. Raphael winced as the doctor probed the wound. It's handled. Handled? You're bleeding. It's a scratch. It's 4 inches long and needs stitches, Dr. Castellano interjected dryly. Stop moving or I'll sedate you. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Lena crossed the room before she could second-guess it, dropping to her knees beside Raphael's chair. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenched on the armrests like he was holding himself together through sheer will. What happened? She asked again, quieter this time. Raphael met her eyes, and something in his expression cracked. Konstantin wanted to negotiate. I declined. He took exception. You got stabbed because you wouldn't negotiate? I got stabbed because he thought threatening you would make me more cooperative. Raphael's voice went cold and hard. He was wrong. Lena's breath caught. He threatened me? He suggested that accidents could happen to anyone, no matter how well protected, that it would be a shame if your brother's care was interrupted, or if you found yourself alone in the wrong neighborhood again. Raphael's eyes never left hers. I explained that if he so much as looked in your direction, I would burn his empire to ash and salt the earth where it stood. And he stabbed you for that? One of his men got jumpy. Dmitri handled it. The casual way he said it, like getting stabbed was just another Tuesday, made Lena want to scream. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his before she could talk herself out of it. Raphael went very still. You're an idiot, Lena said quietly. I'm aware. You could have been killed. I wasn't. But you could have been. And for what? To prove a point? To protect someone you barely know? Raphael's hand tightened on hers. I know you well enough. You don't know anything about me. Not really. You know facts from a background check and what you've seen over the past week. That's not knowing someone. Then tell me, Raphael said, his voice low and intense. Tell me something real, something that isn't in any file. Dr. Castellano cleared her throat. I'm going to give you two some privacy. Raphael, don't move for at least 30 minutes. The local anesthetic needs time to work before I finish stitching. She packed up her supplies and left without waiting for an acknowledgement. The door clicked shut, and Lena became acutely aware that she was still holding Raphael's hand, still kneeling beside his chair close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. I'm afraid of thunderstorms, she said abruptly. Raphael blinked. What? You wanted something real. That's real. I've been terrified of thunderstorms since I was 6 years old. My mom used to let me sleep in her bed when they got bad, and she'd tell me stories until I fell asleep. Lena's throat tightened. After she died, I had to get through them alone. I still hate them. I still hide under blankets and blast music so I don't have to hear the thunder. Your mother died when you were young? Cancer. I was 14. Jamie was 8. The old grief sat heavy in her chest, familiar and aching. That's when I learned that nobody was coming to save us, that if we were going to survive, I had to figure it out myself. Is that why you won't accept help? Because you think it makes you weak? Because I think it makes me vulnerable. People leave, Raphael. They die, they move on, they get tired of carrying your weight. The only person you can really count on is yourself. Raphael was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing absent circles on the back of her hand. My sister used to say something similar, that the world was cruel and the only way to survive it was to be harder, colder, more ruthless than everyone around you. Your sister? Elena. She died 6 years ago, shot in the head by a rival family while she was walking out of a restaurant. Raphael's voice went flat, emotionless. She was 23. She wasn't involved in the business. She just had the wrong last name. Lena's heart fractured. Raphael. I was supposed to meet her that night. I was late because I was handling a deal that couldn't wait. By the time I got there, she was already gone. He looked at Lena, and the pain in his eyes was raw and terrible. You asked why I care about protecting you. That's why. Because I've already failed someone I loved, and I won't do it again. The confession hung between them, heavy and honest and impossibly sad. Lena lifted her free hand and pressed it to Raphael's cheek, feeling the rough stubble and the tension in his jaw. I'm not your sister. You don't owe me her life. I know that. Do you? Because it feels like you're trying to atone for something that wasn't your fault by putting yourself in danger for someone who isn't your responsibility. You became my responsibility the moment you set foot in this house. That's not how responsibility works. It is for me. Raphael turned his face into her palm, his eyes closing briefly. I can't explain it any better than that. I just know that keeping you safe feels like something I have to do, something that matters. Lena's breath hitched. She should pull away, should put distance between them before this became something neither of them could take back. But she couldn't make herself move, couldn't stop looking at this dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become the first person in years to see her as more than a list of obligations. You scare me, she whispered. Raphael's eyes opened. I know. Not because of what you do, because of how you make me feel. And how's that? Like maybe I don't have to do everything alone. Like maybe it's okay to want something for myself instead of just surviving. Lena swallowed hard. That terrifies me, because wanting things means they can be taken away. Raphael's hand came up to cover hers, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. I'm not going anywhere, Lena. You can't promise that. Watch me. The certainty in his voice, the unwavering conviction, made something shift in Lena's chest. She leaned forward without thinking, closing the distance between them until her forehead rested against his. I don't know how to do this, she breathed. Do what? Trust someone. Let myself need them. Then we'll figure it out together. Raphael's voice was rough, barely above a whisper. One day at a time, one moment at a time, whatever you can handle. Lena closed her eyes, letting herself exist in this suspended moment, kneeling on the floor of a stranger's mansion, holding the hand of a man who killed people for a living, feeling safer than she had in years. One moment at a time, she repeated. Raphael's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, a touch so gentle it made her ache. Tell me to stop. Stop what? This. His other hand came up to cup the back of her neck, fingers threading into her hair. Tell me this is crossing a line and I'll pull back. Tell me you don't want it and I'll forget it ever happened. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew she should say exactly that, should establish boundaries and keep things professional and protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak. But when she opened her eyes and saw the way Raphael was looking at her, like she was something precious and vital and worth every risk, the words wouldn't come. I can't tell you that, she whispered. Why not? Because I'd be lying. Raphael's expression shifted into something fierce and hungry and almost reverent. Lena! The door burst open. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, and Lena scrambled to her feet just as Dmitri strode in, his expression urgent. We've got a problem, he said without preamble. Constantine's people just hit one of our shipment routes. 3 men down, cargo's gone. He's escalating. Raphael was on his feet despite the doctor's orders, his face hardening into the cold mask Lena recognized from their first real conversation. Where? Port Authority. Kozlov's claiming it was retaliation for what happened earlier. He wants a war. He'll get one. Raphael grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, wincing as the movement pulled his stitches. Call everyone in. I want a full meeting in 30 minutes. Boss, you need to rest. I need to end this before it gets worse. 30 minutes, Dmitri. Make it happen. Dmitri nodded and disappeared. Raphael turned back to Lena, and for just a second the mask cracked. I have to go. I know. Stay in the East Wing. Don't leave without security. Raphael? Please. The word sounded like it cost him. Just for tonight. Let me handle this, and then we'll talk. I promise. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, to understand what kind of war she'd stumbled into the middle of. But the look in Raphael's eyes stopped her, exhaustion and determination, and something that looked almost like fear. Okay, she said quietly. Be careful. Raphael crossed the space between them in 2 strides, cupped her face in both hands, and pressed a kiss to her forehead that felt like a promise and a prayer all at once. One moment at a time, he murmured against her skin. Then he was gone, and Lena was left alone in the empty room, her heart racing and her world tilting on its axis, wondering when she'd stopped being the girl who survived and started being the girl who wanted something more. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat curled on the window seat in her room, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked glass while her mind replayed every moment with Raphael on an endless loop. The way he'd looked at her, the rough edge in his voice when he'd asked her to tell him to stop, the kiss he'd pressed to her forehead like she was something breakable and precious. One moment at a time. Somewhere in this massive house, Raphael was making decisions that would probably get people killed. Planning strategies she didn't understand for a war she'd accidentally started just by showing up for work. And all Lena could think about was the warmth of his hands on her face and the terror of wanting something she had no right to want. Around 3 a.m, she gave up on rest and went to check on Jamie. She found him awake too, sitting in his wheelchair by the window with his laptop open. Can't sleep either? He asked without looking up. Too much on my mind. Lena settled onto the edge of his bed. What are you doing? Research. Jamie turned the screen toward her, and Lena saw a news article about a shipping container fire at Port Authority. 3 casualties, no suspects in custody. This happened 6 hours ago, right around the time that guard came and told me not to leave the room no matter what I heard. Lena's stomach clenched. Jamie. I'm not an idiot, Lena. I know what Rafael Moretti is. I know what kind of business he runs. Jamie's expression was serious, older than his 19 years. And I know whatever's happening right now, it's because someone tried to hurt you. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You got targeted because you work here. Rafael decided that wasn't acceptable. Now people are dying. He paused. The question is, how do you feel about that? Lena opened her mouth and found she didn't have an answer. How did she feel? Guilty because violence was being done in her name? Relieved because someone finally gave enough of a damn to stand between her and danger? Terrified because she was falling for a man whose hands were probably covered in blood right now? I don't know, she admitted quietly. That's honest, at least. Jamie closed the laptop. For what it's worth, I don't think he's doing this just because he feels responsible. I've seen the way he looks at you. Heat flooded Lena's cheeks. There's nothing we haven't... I didn't say you had. I said he looks at you like you matter, like you're not just another obligation to manage. Jamie's voice softened. When's the last time someone looked at you like that? Never. The answer was never, but Lena couldn't say it out loud without her voice breaking. It doesn't matter how he looks at me, she said instead. His world and mine don't exactly overlap. When this is over, when Constantine backs off, or gets handled, or whatever happens to end this, Rafael will go back to running his empire, and I'll go back to cleaning houses. That's reality. You really believe that? I have to. Anything else is just setting myself up to get hurt. Jamie reached for her hand, squeezing gently. You know what Mom used to say about you? She said you had the biggest heart of anyone she'd ever met, but you were so scared of losing people that you'd rather push them away first, even when you were a kid. Lena's throat went tight. Mom also said hope was free. Look where that got her. She didn't die because she hoped, Lena. She died because cancer doesn't care about your attitude. But she lived happy because she let herself love people. Let herself believe good things could happen even when the odds sucked. Jamie's eyes held hers. You've spent 10 years surviving. Maybe it's time to try living. Before Lena could respond, footsteps in the hallway made them both tense. A knock followed, soft but firm. It's Dimitri, a voice called through the door. Boss wants to see you, Miss Hart. Lena's heart kicked into overdrive. She squeezed Jamie's hand once more and stood. I'll be back. Be careful, Jamie said, and the worry in his voice made her chest ache. Dimitri was waiting in the hallway, his face unreadable. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and tension in his jaw that spoke of a very long night. Is he hurt? Lena asked immediately. He's fine. Meeting ran long, that's all. Dimitri started walking, and Lena fell into step beside him. He's in his private study. 3rd floor, south wing. They moved through the quiet house in silence. Lena wanted to ask what had happened at the meeting, whether the situation with Constantine had been resolved, if more people had died while she'd sat safe in her room. But Dimitri's expression didn't invite questions. He stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. Come in, Raphael's voice called, muffled and rough. Dimitri opened the door and stepped aside, letting Lena pass. I'll be outside if you need me, boss. The study was smaller than Raphael's main office, more personal. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, a fireplace crackled in the corner, and Raphael stood with his back to the door, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. He'd changed clothes since Lena had last seen him, now wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger, more human. But his shoulders were rigid with tension, and when he finally turned to face her, the exhaustion in his eyes hit her like a physical blow. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. I tried. Didn't take. Raphael moved to a small bar cart and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He held one out to Lena. You drink? Not usually. Make an exception. Trust me. Lena took the glass and sipped. The whiskey burned going down, but the warmth that spread through her chest was almost worth it. Raphael drained his own glass in one swallow and poured another. Bad night? Lena asked quietly. Productive night. There's a difference. He gestured to the couch near the fireplace. Sit. Please. Lena sat, and Raphael settled beside her, close enough that their knees almost touched. Up close, she could see the strain carved into his features, the tightness around his mouth, the way his hands weren't quite steady. Constantine's backing off, Raphael said abruptly. We came to an arrangement. Relief flooded through Lena so hard and fast it made her dizzy. Really? He gets the shipping routes he wanted. I get assurances that you and your brother are permanently off limits. Anyone in his organization who so much as looks at you wrong answers to me directly. Raphael's jaw tightened. He wasn't happy about it, but he's smart enough to know when to fold. You gave up territory for me? I gave up territory I didn't need for your safety. There's a difference. Raphael, don't. He set his glass down hard enough that the crystal clinked against the table. Don't tell me it wasn't worth it. Don't tell me I should have let you take your chances. I made a choice, and I'd make it again. The fierce conviction in his voice stole Lena's breath. She set her own glass aside and turned to face him fully. How many people died tonight? Raphael's expression shuddered. Why does that matter? Because I need to know. Because if people are dying because of me, I need to carry that weight too. You don't get to protect me from the consequences of your choices. For a long moment, Raphael just looked at her, something complicated and almost pained flickering across his face. Then he said, 4. 3 of Constantine's men in the initial hit on our shipment, one of mine who didn't make it to the hospital in time. Lena's stomach turned. And you're okay with that? No. But I'm okay with the alternative even less. Raphael reached out and caught her hand, threading their fingers together. The man I lost tonight, his name was Marcus. He had a wife and a daughter. I called them an hour ago and told them he died protecting something important and that his family would be taken care of for the rest of their lives. His voice went rough. That doesn't make it okay. Nothing makes it okay. But it's the cost of the world I live in. I don't know how you do it, Lena whispered. How you live with that. Honestly? Some days I don't know either. Raphael's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, an absent gesture that felt achingly intimate. But then I think about the alternative. Walking away, letting it all fall apart, watching people I'm responsible for get hurt because I wasn't strong enough to make the hard calls. And I realize I don't actually have a choice. This is who I am. It's not all you are. Raphael's eyes snapped to hers. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because the man who runs a criminal empire doesn't bring in a maid's injured brother and pay for his medical care. He doesn't sit with her at dawn and tell her it's okay to put down the weight she's carrying. He doesn't give up territory to keep her safe. Lena squeezed his hand. You're more than what you have to be for survival, Raphael. You just don't let yourself see it. Something cracked in Raphael's expression, something raw and vulnerable that he tried to hide by looking away. But Lena saw it. Saw the man beneath the armor, the one who carried guilt like a second skin, and believed he didn't deserve anything softer than the violence that surrounded him. You're dangerous, Raphael said quietly. Me? You make me want things I can't have, things I gave up on a long time ago. Lena's heart stuttered. Like what? Like this. Raphael lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Like someone who sees past the blood and the business to the person underneath. Like mattering to someone for reasons that have nothing to do with power or fear. You do matter, to me. The words came out barely above a whisper, but they felt like jumping off a cliff. I know I shouldn't. I know this is complicated and probably a terrible idea, but I can't help it. You matter to me. Raphael's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, the hunger in them made Lena's breath catch. Tell me to leave you alone, Lena. Tell me to keep my distance and stay professional, and I will. But if you don't say it now, I'm not going to be able to. Lena knew she should. Knew that getting involved with Raphael Moretti was signing up for a world of complications she didn't understand and danger she couldn't predict. Knew that loving him, because that's what this feeling was, sharp and terrifying and utterly inevitable, would probably break her heart into pieces. But she was so tired of being careful. So tired of choosing survival over living, of pushing away anything good because it might hurt later. I don't want you to leave me alone, she said. Raphael went very still. Lena, I don't want professional distance. I don't want to pretend this isn't happening. She turned on the couch to face him fully, pulling her hand free only to cup his face the way he'd done to her hours before. I want this, whatever this is, even if it's messy and complicated and probably a mistake. It's definitely a mistake, Raphael said, but his hands came up to frame her waist, pulling her closer. I'm not good for you. My life is violence and paranoia and choices that would keep you up at night. You deserve better. What if I don't want better? What if I just want you? Raphael's control shattered. He pulled her into his lap in one smooth motion, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pressed against her lower back, and kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. Lena gasped against his mouth, her hands fisting in his sweater, and kissed him back with all the want and fear and desperate hope she'd been holding in. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, and the way he held her, like she was precious and necessary, and his, made her feel like she was flying and falling at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Raphael pressed his forehead to hers. "One moment at a time," he murmured. "One moment at a time," Lena agreed. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other in the firelight, while outside the window the sky started to lighten and the city began to wake. And for the first time in longer than Lena could remember, she let herself hope that maybe survival wasn't the only option. Maybe there was room for something more. Oh, the next week passed in a strange, suspended reality. Constantine kept his word. The threats stopped. The hostile eyes watching the mansion disappeared, and life in the Moretti estate settled into something almost normal. Jamie's physical therapy continued, his condition improving by small increments that made Lena want to cry with relief. Dr. Castellano cleared Lena for full activity, though she still had orders to take it easy. And Raphael became a presence in her life in a way that felt both inevitable and impossible to process. He didn't hide it. Didn't pretend what was happening between them was casual or temporary. He had breakfast sent to her room with handwritten notes. He showed up in the library, where she'd started reading in the evenings, and sat with her in comfortable silence. He asked about her day, her brother, her plans, like her answers actually mattered. And at night, when the house was quiet and the guards weren't watching, he'd find her, sometimes in the study where they'd first kissed, sometimes in the conservatory on the second floor that nobody else used. Once, memorably, in the kitchen at 2 a.m. when neither of them could sleep. They talked, they kissed, they learned each other in increments. The way Raphael took his coffee, the fact that Lena couldn't function before 9 without caffeine, the scar on his ribs from a fight when he was 17, the way Lena's hand shook when she was nervous. It was terrifying and intoxicating, and more than Lena had ever let herself want. "You're glowing," Jamie said one morning, grinning over his breakfast. "It's disgusting." Lena threw a piece of toast at him. "Shut up. I'm just saying, whatever you and Raphael are doing, it's working for you. You look happy." "I am happy." The admission felt dangerous, like saying it out loud might jinx it. "I'm also terrified." "That's how you know it's real." Before Lena could respond, a knock interrupted them. One of the household staff, a woman named Maria, who'd been kind to Lena since day one, poked her head in. "Miss Hart? Mr. Moretti asked if you join him in his office when you have a moment." Lena's stomach flipped. Raphael never summoned her during business hours. They'd kept their relationship carefully separate from the running of his empire, both of them understanding instinctively that mixing the two was dangerous. Did he say why? Only that it was important. Lena exchanged a look with Jamie, saw her own worry reflected in his eyes, and stood. "I'll be back." The walk to Raphael's main office felt longer than it should have. Lena's mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened with Constantine? Was there a new threat? Had Raphael changed his mind about whatever this thing between them was? She knocked, and Raphael's voice called for her to enter. He was standing behind his desk, and he wasn't alone. Dmitri was there, along with 2 other men Lena vaguely recognized from the household, both members of Raphael's inner circle. All 3 looked grim. "Lena." Raphael's face softened fractionally when he saw her. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Lena sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, very aware of the eyes on her. "What's going on?" Raphael leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you react." Dread pooled in Lena's stomach. "Okay." "Your medical debt, the $53,000 from your brother's accident and subsequent care. It's been paid off." In full. As of this morning. Lena's brain stuttered to a halt. What? I also paid off your student loans and the back rent you owe on your apartment. You're clear. No debt, no creditors, no collections calls. The room tilted. Lena gripped the arms of the chair, trying to process what he'd just said. You can't… Raphael, that's over $70,000. You can't just… I can, and I did. His voice was gentle but firm. Before you argue, let me finish. I've also arranged for Jamie to see a specialist in spinal rehabilitation, one of the best in the country. He's agreed to take Jamie on as a patient. The prognosis is good. Not guaranteed, but good. There's a real chance he could regain significant mobility. Lena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The magnitude of what Raphael had just done crashed over her in waves. The debt that had been crushing her for 2 years, gone. The future she'd stopped letting herself hope for, suddenly possible. I can't accept this, she whispered. Yes, you can. No, I can't. It's too much. I can't. I won't be owned like some kind of… You're not owned. Raphael moved around the desk and crouched in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. You're free. That's the point. You're free from the weight that's been drowning you, free to make choices that aren't dictated by desperation. Why? Lena's voice cracked. Why would you do this? Because I can. Because you matter to me. Because watching you work yourself to death trying to survive was killing something in me I didn't know I still had. Raphael's eyes held hers, dark and intense and utterly sincere. I don't want your gratitude, Lena. I don't want you to feel obligated. I want you to have options. I want you to stay here because you choose to, not because you have nowhere else to go. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks before she could stop them. What if I choose to leave? Pain flickered across Raphael's face, but his voice stayed steady. Then I'll make sure you and Jamie have everything you need to start fresh somewhere safe. I'll make sure you're protected, and I'll let you go. You'd really do that? I'd hate every second of it, but yes. Raphael reached up to brush away her tears with his thumbs. I meant what I said before. I don't do temporary, but I also don't do chains. You're not a prisoner here, Lena. You never were. Lena's mind reeled. She thought about the apartment she'd been paying rent on, the collection calls that had haunted her for months, the desperation that had colored every decision she'd made since Jamie's accident. All of it, gone. Erased by a man who looked at her like she hung the moon and asked for nothing in return except the chance to keep her safe. It was too much. It was everything. It was terrifying. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. Just think about it. Think about what you want, not what you think you should want or what you think I expect. Just what makes you happy. Lena looked at him, this complicated, violent, surprisingly tender man who'd turned her world upside down, and felt something settle into place in her chest. Something that felt like certainty. You make me happy, she said quietly. Being here with you makes me happy. And that scares me more than anything else in my life ever has. Raphael's expression cracked into something vulnerable and raw. Why? Because happiness can be taken away. Because I don't know how to trust that this is real, that it'll last, that I won't wake up one day and find out it was all too good to be true. Then don't trust it yet. Just stay. Give it time. Let me prove to you that this is real. Raphael's hands tightened on hers. I can't promise you perfect, Lena. My life is messy and dangerous, and sometimes people get hurt. But I can promise you honest. I can promise you that as long as you're willing to try, I'll be here. Lena's heart felt too big for her chest. She slid off the chair and into Raphael's arms, burying her face against his neck while he held her like she was the only solid thing in his world. One moment at a time, she murmured against his skin. One moment at a time, he agreed. Dmitri cleared his throat, and Lena suddenly remembered they had an audience. She pulled back, heat flooding her cheeks, but Raphael didn't let go. Just kept one arm around her waist while he turned to address his men. Dismissed, he said simply. They filed out without argument, though Dmitri paused at the door. For what it's worth, boss, I think you made the right call. Raphael nodded, and then they were alone. I should talk to Jamie, Lena said. Tell him about the specialist. He already knows. I asked Dr. Castellano to brief him this morning. Raphael's thumb traced idle patterns on her hip. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Control freak, Lena said, but there was no heat in it. Guilty. Raphael pressed a kiss to her temple. Are you angry? I don't know what I am. Overwhelmed, grateful, terrified, all of it at once. She looked up at him. You really meant it? About letting me go if that's what I wanted? Yes. And you'd be okay. Raphael's laugh was short and bitter. No, I'd be miserable, but I'd survive and so would you. That's what matters. Lena reached up and cupped his face, making him look at her. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to decide. I already did. The moment you told me I had a choice, I made it. She kissed him softly, then pulled back. I choose this. I choose you. For as long as you'll have me. The smile that broke across Raphael's face was like sunlight through clouds, rare and beautiful, and worth every moment of fear that had led to it. Then I guess you're stuck with me, he said. I can think of worse fates. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other. While outside the office the empire ran itself and the city churned on and the future stretched out ahead of them, uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. For the first time in her life, Lena wasn't just surviving, she was living. The fragile peace lasted exactly 9 days. Lena should have known better than to trust it, should have recognized the quiet for what it was. Not resolution, but the breath before the storm. But she'd let herself relax, let herself believe that maybe the worst was behind them, that Raphael's arrangement with Constantine had actually worked. She was in the library with Jamie when Dmitri appeared in the doorway, his face carved from stone. Miss Hart, I need you to come with me, now. The tone of his voice, flat, urgent, allowing no argument, sent ice through Lena's veins. She was on her feet before she'd consciously decided to move. What happened? Not here, Dimitri's eyes flicked to Jamie. Your brother stays with Dr. Castellano. There's a guard outside his room. Dmitri, what the hell is going on? Constantine's dead. Someone put 3 bullets in his head 2 hours ago in his own restaurant. Dimitri's jaw tightened. His nephew Victor is claiming Raphael ordered the hit. He's calling for blood. The room spun. Lena grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. That's insane. Raphael wouldn't. The arrangement was working. Why would he? He didn't. But that won't matter to Victor. The man's a hothead, and he's looking for an excuse to take control of Constantine's operation. This gives him one. Dmitri moved closer, his voice dropping. We have about 6 hours before Victor makes his move. Maybe less. Raphael wants you and your brother in the panic room until this is resolved. Where is he? Handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Dmitri gestured toward the door. Please, Miss Hart. I promised the boss I'd get you somewhere safe. Don't make me break that promise. Lena looked at Jamie, saw the fear in his eyes mirroring her own, and made a decision. Okay, but I want updates. Every hour. I want to know what's happening. I'll do what I can. 20 minutes later, Lena and Jamie were sealed in the panic room with Dr. Castellano, 2 guards, and enough supplies to last a week if necessary. The walls were concrete reinforced with steel, the door could withstand explosives, and the ventilation system had its own independent power source. It was a fortress. It felt like a tomb. This is my fault, Lena said quietly, pacing the small space while Jamie watched from his wheelchair. If I hadn't been here, if Raphael hadn't made that deal with Constantine... Stop. Jamie's voice was sharp. You didn't kill Constantine. Someone else did. This isn't on you. But Raphael's in danger because of me, because he protected me, because he gave up territory to keep me safe. And now someone's using that against him. You don't know that. Don't I? Lena's laugh was bitter. Victor's looking for a reason to start a war. What better way than to frame Raphael for killing his uncle? It destroys the peace agreement and makes Raphael look like he can't be trusted. It's perfect. Dr. Castellano looked up from where she was organizing medical supplies. You're assuming Victor is smart enough to plan something that calculated. What if he is? Then Raphael will handle it. He's been navigating this world a lot longer than you've known him, Miss Hart. He knows how to survive. But surviving wasn't the same as being safe, and Lena couldn't shake the sick certainty that Raphael was walking into something that might finally be bigger than his ability to control it. The first hour passed like pulling teeth. The second was worse. By the third, Lena was ready to claw her way out of the panic room just to have something to do besides imagine all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. When Dmitri finally came through on the intercom, His voice was strained. Victor's making his move. He's got half of Constantine's organization convinced Raphael ordered the hit. The other half doesn't care either way. They just want blood. Raphael's calling in every favor he's owed to keep this from turning into an all-out war. Lena pressed the button to respond. Is he safe? A pause. Define safe. Dmitri, he's not hurt, yet. But Victor's demanding a meeting. Neutral ground, just the two of them. Raphael's considering it. Horror flooded through Lena. That's a trap. It has to be. Probably. But if he doesn't go, Victor will take it as confirmation of guilt, and we'll have 20 armed men kicking down our doors by midnight. So he goes to a meeting where he'll probably be killed, or he stays here and we all get killed anyway. Lena's voice cracked. Those are terrible options. Welcome to the life. Dmitri's sigh crackled through the speaker. I'll update you when I know more. The intercom went silent. Lena sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Jamie wheeled over and took one of her hands in his. He'll be okay, Jamie said, but he didn't sound convinced. You don't know that. No. But I know he's not stupid, and I know he's got a lot to live for now. Jamie squeezed her hand. He's got you. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they just made the fear worse. Because now Raphael wasn't just fighting for his empire or his reputation. He was fighting for a future that included her, and the weight of that felt crushing. Another hour crawled by. Then another. Lena wore a path in the concrete floor with her pacing, ignoring Dr. Castellano's gentle suggestions that she rest, that she eat something, that she try to stay calm for her own health. How was she supposed to stay calm when the man she loved was somewhere out there, probably making deals with the devil just to keep her safe? When had she fallen in love with him? Lena couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. Somewhere between the hospital bed and the kitchen at dawn, between his confession about his sister and the way he'd kissed her like she was oxygen. It had happened gradually, and then all at once, and now the thought of losing him made her chest feel like it was caving in. The intercom crackled to life again, and Lena nearly jumped out of her skin. Meeting set. Dmitri's voice was tight. Tomorrow at noon. An old warehouse in Red Hook that's been neutral ground for 20 years. Raphael's taking me and 2 others. Victor's bringing the same. Can you trust Victor to honor neutral ground? No, but we don't have better options. A pause. Raphael wants to talk to you. Lena's heart stopped. Put him on. Static. Then Raphael's voice. Rough and exhausted. Lena. Are you insane? The words burst out before she could stop them. You're walking into a meeting with someone who wants you dead. That's suicide. It's strategy. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. I know. Raphael's voice softened. But if I don't go, this ends badly for everyone in this house. Victor wants war. I'm trying to give him something else. Like what? Your corpse? Like proof I didn't kill his uncle. Raphael sighed. I've got security footage from 3 different angles showing I was in a meeting with city officials when Constantine was shot. I've got phone records, witnesses, everything I need to prove Victor's wrong. I just need him to look at the evidence before he burns the city down. And you think he'll actually look? That he won't just shoot you the second you walk in? He might. But he also might listen, and that's a chance I have to take. Lena pressed her palm against the concrete wall, wishing she could reach through it and grab him. I hate this. I hate that you have to risk your life to prove something you didn't do. I know. I'm not thrilled about it either. A pause. But Lena, I need you to understand something. If this goes wrong tomorrow, don't. Her voice broke. Don't you dare say goodbye to me right now. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying I love you. The world stopped. Lena's breath caught, her eyes stinging with tears she couldn't blink away. Raphael, I love you, he repeated, quieter this time. I've probably loved you since that morning in the kitchen when you told me you were afraid of thunderstorms. I just didn't let myself admit it until now. You can't tell me that right before you walk into a death trap. That's not fair. Life's not fair. But I needed you to know. Whatever happens tomorrow, I needed you to know that you changed everything for me. That you made me remember what it feels like to want something more than power or control or revenge. Lena was crying now, hot tears streaming down her face, while Jamie watched with concern. "You come back to me. You hear me? You don't get to tell me you love me and then die. That's not how this works." "I'll do my best." "Your best isn't good enough. I need a promise." "Lena, promise me, Raphael. Promise me you'll come back." The silence stretched so long Lena thought he'd hung up. Then, quietly, "I promise I'll try." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was all she was going to get. "I love you too," Lena whispered. In case that wasn't obvious. Raphael's laugh was short and pained. "It wasn't, but I'm glad to hear it." Another pause. "Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow." The intercom went dead, and Lena slid down the wall to the floor, sobbing into her hands, while Jamie wheeled over and held her as best he could, and Dr. Castellano quietly pretended not to notice. Lena didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Raphael bleeding out in some warehouse while Victor stood over him, and the image was visceral enough to make her nauseous. By the time Dmitri came to let them out of the panic room at dawn, Lena was a wreck, eyes red-rimmed, hands shaking with exhaustion and fear, stomach too twisted to eat. "Where is he?" she demanded the second the door opened. "Getting ready. The meeting's in 6 hours." Dmitri's expression was grim. "He wants to see you before he leaves." Lena found Raphael in his study, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal shirt, checking the magazine of a handgun with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. He looked up when she entered, and the exhaustion in his eyes matched her own. "You look terrible," he said. "So do you." Raphael set the gun aside and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms without a word. Lena buried her face against his chest, breathing him in, trying to memorize everything about this moment in case it was the last one they got. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too." "You're not supposed to admit that." "Why not? It's true." Raphael's hand stroked through her hair. "I'm terrified this goes wrong and I never see you again. That Victor doesn't care about evidence or truth, just blood. That I'm making the wrong call and it costs everything. Then don't go." "You know I have to." "I know." Lena pulled back enough to look at him. "But I can still hate it." Raphael cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "If something happens to me..." "Stop. Let me finish. If something happens, Dmitri has instructions. You and Jamie are taken care of. The house is yours if you want it. Your brother's medical care is covered for life. You'll never have to worry about money or safety again. I don't want your money. I want you. I know, but I need you to hear this. I need to know you'll be okay." Lena's hands fisted in his shirt. "I won't be. If you die today, I won't be okay. So you need to not die. You need to walk into that warehouse, prove you didn't kill Constantine, and walk back out. Can you do that?" Raphael's smile was sad and fond and achingly tender. "I can try." "Try harder." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of everything they hadn't had time to say. Lena kissed him back with every ounce of love and fear and stubborn hope she had, trying to pour all of it into this moment because it might be all they got. When they finally broke apart, Raphael pressed his forehead to hers. "One moment at a time," he murmured. "One moment at a time," Lena echoed, her voice breaking. Dmitri appeared in the doorway. "It's time, boss." Raphael stepped back, his hands sliding away from Lena's face slowly, like he was reluctant to let go. "Stay inside. Don't leave the estate. And Lena?" "Yeah? Trust me." Then he was gone, and Lena was left standing in the empty study with her heart in her throat and nothing to do but wait. The next 6 hours were the longest of Lena's life. She tried to distract herself, sat with Jamie, attempted to read, paced the halls until her legs ached. But every minute felt like an hour, and the silence from Dmitri was deafening. At one point, Dr. Castellano gently suggested a sedative. Lena refused. She needed to be alert, needed to be ready for whatever news came, good or bad. At 12:15, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Warehouse is clear. Meeting starting now. We'll update soon. D." Lena stared at the message, her hands trembling. Starting now. Raphael was in there with Victor, trying to prove his innocence to a man who probably didn't care about truth. 12:30 came and went, then 12:45. 1 o'clock. No updates. By 1:15, Lena was ready to steal a car and drive to Red Hook herself, consequences be damned. She was halfway to the garage when her phone buzzed again. Situation resolved. Boss is fine. Heading back now. Relief hit her so hard she had to grab the wall to stay upright. Her knees went weak, her vision blurred, and for a moment she couldn't breathe around the sob building in her chest. He was alive, he was safe, he was coming back. Lena made it to the front entrance just as the car pulled up. Raphael stepped out, looking exhausted but unharmed, and their eyes met across the driveway. Lena ran. She crashed into him hard enough that he stumbled back a step, but his arms came around her immediately, holding her tight while she shook with reaction and relief. "You're okay," she gasped. "You're really okay." "I'm okay." Raphael's voice was rough in her ear. "I promised I'd try, remember?" "What happened?" Victor looked at the evidence. "Took some convincing, but he eventually accepted I didn't kill his uncle. We're working together now to figure out who did." Lena pulled back to stare at him. "You're working with the man who wanted you dead this morning? Enemy of my enemy and all that. Someone set me up, and Victor wants blood as much as I want answers. We've got a temporary alliance until we find who actually pulled the trigger. That's insane. Welcome to my world." Raphael's smile was tired but genuine. "Come on, let's get inside. I need a drink and about 12 hours of sleep." They made it as far as the study before Lena's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch, all the adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. Raphael poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. "Drink." Lena drank. The burn helped center her, brought her back into her body. "I thought I was going to lose you," she said quietly. "You almost did." Victor had a gun on me for about 10 minutes before Dmitri convinced him to look at the security footage. Raphael settled beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. "Longest 10 minutes of my life. I can't do this again. I can't sit here wondering if you're going to come back in a body bag." Lena set her glass down with shaking hands. "I'm not strong enough for that." "Yes, you are. You're the strongest person I know." "I'm really not. I'm terrified and exhausted and way out of my depth, and the only thing keeping me from falling apart is you." She turned to face him. "But I need you to understand something. I can't be with someone who treats his life like it's expendable, who walks into death traps because it's strategic. I need you to value yourself the way I value you." Raphael's expression cracked open, something raw and vulnerable bleeding through. "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn. Because I love you, and I'm choosing this life with you, but I can't watch you throw yourself on swords over and over. I just can't." "What do you want from me, Lena?" "I want you to fight like you have something to lose, because you do. You have me, you have this, and that should matter enough to make you careful." Raphael was quiet for a long moment, staring at their joined hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I've spent so long believing I didn't deserve anything good that I stopped trying to protect it when I got it. I just accepted that everything I cared about would eventually be taken away." He looked up, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "But you're right. I have something to lose now. Someone who matters more than territory or power or revenge. And I need to start acting like it. Can you do that?" "I don't know, but I want to try." Raphael lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "For you, I want to try." It wasn't a perfect answer. It wasn't even a complete one. But it was honest, and it was a start, and Lena decided that was enough. "One moment at a time," she whispered. Raphael pulled her into his lap, holding her close, while she finally let herself break down, all the fear and relief pouring out in shaking sobs against his shoulder. He held her through it, murmuring reassurances in Italian and English, his hand steady and sure. When Lena finally calmed, cried out and exhausted, Raphael carried her to his bedroom, a space she'd never seen before, and laid her down on sheets that smelled like him. "Sleep," he ordered gently. "I'll be right here." "Promise?" "Promise." Lena's eyes drifted closed, and the last thing she felt was Raphael's hand in hers, solid and real and alive. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of Raphael's voice, low and urgent, coming from somewhere nearby. She sat up slowly, her body aching from the emotional wreckage of the previous day. Raphael's bedroom was exactly what she would have expected, Minimalist, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The bed alone was probably worth more than everything she'd owned before coming here. Raphael stood by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, tension visible in the line of his shoulders. He was still wearing yesterday's clothes, rumpled and creased, and Lena realized with a pang that he probably hadn't slept at all. "I don't care what it costs," Raphael said into the phone. "Find him. I want a name by tonight." A pause. "No, not Dmitri. Keep him on Victor. I need someone else for this." Another pause, then his voice dropped into something cold and dangerous. "Then make them talk. I'm done being patient." He ended the call and turned, catching sight of Lena awake. The hardness in his expression melted immediately. "You're up. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Lena pushed her hair out of her face. "Who were you talking to?" "Following leads on who actually killed Konstantin. Victor's been cooperative, but his people are scared. Someone high up in his organization orchestrated this, and they're covering their tracks well." Raphael moved to sit on the edge of the bed. "We'll find them." "And when you do?" Raphael's jaw tightened. "They answer for what they did, for the chaos they caused, the lives they put at risk, for making you think I was going to die." The possessiveness in his tone should have worried her. Instead, it just made her reach for his hand. "Don't do anything stupid for my sake." "Too late. Everything I do now is for your sake." Raphael kissed her knuckles. "That's what love does. Makes you stupid and reckless and willing to burn the world down to keep one person safe. That's not love, that's obsession. With you, there's not much difference." Lena's heart squeezed. She tugged him closer until he was lying beside her, his head on her shoulder, and ran her fingers through his hair. He was so tense he might as well have been carved from marble. "When's the last time you slept?" she asked quietly. "Don't remember. Couple days ago, maybe." "Raphael, I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see that warehouse. See Victor with his gun, see all the ways it could have gone wrong. See you getting hurt because I couldn't protect you." His voice cracked. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if Victor hadn't listened, if I died and left you here alone to deal with the fallout." Lena's throat tightened. "But you didn't. You're here. We're both here." "This time. What about next time? Then we handle it. Together." She made him look at her. "You don't get to carry all of this alone anymore. I'm in this with you now. That means the fear, the danger, the impossible choices, we share it. I don't want you to have to share it. You deserve better than living in constant fear." "Maybe, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." Lena traced the line of his jaw. "That's my choice. You don't get to make it for me." Raphael closed his eyes, and Lena felt the shudder that went through him. When he opened them again, they were wet. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "How to be someone worth loving without also being someone who destroys everything he touches." You start by believing you're capable of both. That you can be dangerous and tender, ruthless and kind. That you don't have to choose between protecting your world and being human in it. Lena's hand settled over his heart. "You're not a monster, Raphael. You've just been surviving in a world that demands monstrous things, but that's not all you are." "How do you know?" "Because monsters don't fall apart at the thought of losing someone. They don't carry guilt for people who died years ago. They don't pay off a stranger's medical debt or bring her injured brother into their home or look at her like she's the only good thing in their entire life." Lena's voice went soft. "You're not a monster. You're just a man who's been hurt and scared for so long he forgot what it feels like to be anything else." Raphael made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, and then he was kissing her, desperate and grateful and achingly tender. Lena kissed him back, trying to pour all her certainty into him, all her stubborn belief that he could be more than the violence his world demanded. When they finally broke apart, Raphael's eyes were clear for the first time since she'd woken up. "I love you," he said. "I need you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever I have to do to end this, I love you." "I know. And I love you too. Which is why you're going to sleep for at least 4 hours before you do anything else." "Lena, not negotiable. You're exhausted, you're running on fumes, and you're going to make mistakes if you don't rest." She pushed him back against the pillows. "Sleep. I'll wake you if anything urgent comes up." Raphael looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. His eyes drifted closed, and within minutes his breathing had evened out. Lena stayed beside him, watching the tension slowly drain from his face, and let herself hope that maybe they could actually survive this. The answer came 3 days later. Lena was with Jamie in the conservatory when Dmitri appeared, his expression grim but satisfied. "We found him. Victor's second in command, a man named Alexei Volkov. He's been skimming from Konstantin's operations for years, got greedy, and decided to eliminate his boss and pin it on Raphael to cover his tracks." Lena's stomach dropped. "What happens now?" "Victor wants a meeting, him, Raphael, and Alexei. He's proposing that we handle this together, show a united front so nobody else gets ideas about challenging the arrangement." "Is that safe?" "Safer than the alternative. If we let Victor handle it alone, it looks like we're weak. If Raphael handles it alone, it looks like we're overstepping. Together sends the message that this kind of betrayal won't be tolerated by anyone." It made a brutal kind of sense, and Lena hated how quickly she was learning to think in terms of power dynamics and strategic messaging. "Where's Raphael?" "In his office. He wants to see you before the meeting." Lena found him standing by the window, staring out at the city with his hands in his pockets. He looked better than he had 3 days ago, rested, focused, the frantic edge of fear replaced by cold determination. "Dmitri told you?" he asked without turning around. "Yeah, are you going?" "I have to. This ends tonight, one way or another." Raphael finally looked at her. "Alexei's going to die. You understand that, right? There's no version of this where he walks away." Lena's breath caught. She'd known, intellectually, that Raphael's world operated by different rules. But knowing and facing it directly were two different things. Because he killed Konstantin? Because he tried to start a war that would have gotten dozens of people killed, including you. Because he put a target on your back the moment he decided to frame me. Raphael's voice went cold. Because I can't let that stand. If I do, I'm weak. And weak men in my position don't survive long enough to protect the people they love. The casual way he talked about killing someone should have horrified her. Maybe it would have, 2 months ago. But Lena had learned something in the past weeks. The world wasn't black and white, and survival sometimes meant making impossible choices. "I'm not going to tell you not to do it," she said quietly. "That's not my place. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't become the thing you hate. Don't let this world turn you into someone who kills just because he can, who solves every problem with violence." Lena moved closer. "Do what you have to do tonight. But come back to me still human. Can you do that?" Raphael's expression cracked. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her hair. "Probably not, but you've got me anyway." Lena pulled back enough to look at him. "Be careful tonight. And Raphael?" "Yeah? Come home. Always." But the hours after Raphael left felt endless. Lena tried to stay busy, read to Jamie, help Dr. Castellano with inventory, attempted to eat dinner, and failed. But all she could think about was Raphael in some dark room, meting out justice in ways she didn't want to imagine. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. "It's done. Heading back now." R. Relief and something darker twisted in Lena's chest. It was done. Alexei was dead, the threat was neutralized, and Raphael was coming home. She met him at the front entrance, same as before. But this time, when he stepped out of the car, there was blood on his shirt cuff. Lena's stomach turned, but she didn't look away. This was part of loving Raphael Moretti, accepting that his hands would never be completely clean, that the safety he provided came at a cost paid in violence. Raphael stopped a few feet away, searching her face like he was afraid of what he'd find there. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know this isn't what you signed up for." Lena closed the distance between them and took his hand, the one with blood on it, and held it between both of hers. "I signed up for you, all of you, the good parts and the parts that scare me and the parts I don't fully understand." She met his eyes. "I'm not going to pretend I'm okay with everything you do, but I'm also not going to walk away because the world you live in is complicated and brutal. That's not how love works." Raphael's expression crumbled. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair, and Lena felt him shake with something that might have been relief or grief, or both. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," he whispered. You saw me when I was invisible. You protected me when you didn't have to. You gave me choices when I'd forgotten I was allowed to have them. Lena's voice went soft. You loved me when I'd convinced myself I wasn't worth loving. That's what you did. They stood there in the darkness, wrapped around each other, while somewhere in the distance sirens wailed and the city churned on, indifferent to their struggles. Eventually, Raphael pulled back. Come on, let's get cleaned up. They went to his room, and Lena sat on the bed while Raphael disappeared into the bathroom. She heard water running, the sound of him washing away the evidence of what he'd done. When he emerged 20 minutes later, dressed in clean clothes, with his hair still damp, he looked younger, vulnerable. Tell me something good, he said, settling beside her. Something that has nothing to do with blood or territory or revenge. I need to remember there's more to the world than this. Lena thought for a moment, then smiled. Jamie took 3 steps today, with the walker, but still, 3 actual steps. Dr. Castellano says if he keeps improving at this rate, he might be able to walk unassisted in 6 months. The joy that lit Raphael's face was pure and unguarded. That's incredible. It is. And it's because of you. Because you gave him access to care we could never have afforded, because you brought in specialists and didn't blink at the cost. Lena took his hand. You gave my brother his future back. That's the man you are, Raphael. Not just the one who makes hard decisions in dark rooms. The one who changes lives because he can, because someone matters to him. Raphael's eyes went bright. I'm trying to be that man more often, the one who builds instead of destroys. I know, and you're getting better at it every day. They lay down together, Raphael's arm around Lena's shoulders, her head on his chest. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a struggle. And here in this room, 2 damaged people were learning how to love each other despite the odds. What happens now? Lena asked quietly. With Victor, with the territory, with all of it? Now we rebuild. Victor and I have an understanding. We respect each other's boundaries. We communicate before making moves, and we handle internal problems before they become external ones. It's not perfect, but it's stable. And us? Raphael's arm tightened around her. Us, I'm hoping, is just beginning. Jam. The next 3 weeks passed in a kind of surreal peace. Victor kept his word. The territories remained stable. No new threats emerged, and Raphael's empire settled into something that resembled routine. He still had meetings, still made hard calls, still operated in a world Lena didn't fully understand. But he came home to her every night, and that made the rest bearable. Jamie's progress continued. He graduated from the walker to crutches, then to walking short distances on his own. The joy on his face the first time he crossed a room without assistance made Lena cry for 20 minutes straight. I can't believe this is real, Jamie said one afternoon, standing by the window of his room without support. 6 months ago, the doctor said I'd never walk again. Now look at me. You worked hard for this, Lena said, pride swelling in her chest. You earned it. Raphael paid for it. He gave you the opportunity. You did the rest. She moved to stand beside him. What are you going to do with this new lease on life? Jamie was quiet for a moment, then said, I want to finish school. Maybe study physical therapy. Help other people who are going through what I went through. He glanced at her. Raphael said he'd cover tuition if I wanted to go back. Said I could live here while I study, or he'd set me up in an apartment near campus. Whatever I wanted. Lena's throat tightened. He said that? Last week. He pulled me aside and told me that just because you 2 are together doesn't mean I'm stuck being dependent, that he wants me to have a future on my own terms. Jamie's smile was soft. I think I misjudged him at first. He's a good man, Lena, complicated and kind of terrifying, but good where it counts. Yeah, Lena agreed quietly. He really is. That night she found Raphael in his study, reviewing contracts that probably involved activities she was better off not knowing about. You told Jamie you'd pay for him to go back to school, she said from the doorway. Raphael looked up. I did. Is that a problem? No, it's wonderful. I just wish you'd told me first. Why? So you could argue that it's too much, that we can't accept it, that Jamie needs to earn his own way? Raphael set down his pen. I wanted to give him the choice without you feeling obligated to refuse on his behalf. Lena crossed to the desk and perched on the edge. You're getting sneaky. I prefer strategic. Raphael pulled her into his lap. He's a smart kid, Lena. He deserves the chance to build something for himself. And honestly, I like the idea of helping him. It feels like doing something good for once, instead of just managing damage. You do good things all the time. Name one that doesn't involve you or Jamie. Lena paused, thinking. You employ 30 people in this household alone, all at above-market wages with benefits. You've never laid anyone off, even when business was slow. Maria told me you paid for her daughter's wedding last year when she couldn't afford it. Raphael looked uncomfortable. That's just taking care of my people. Exactly. You take care of people. That's what you do, even when you pretend you're just being practical. Lena cupped his face. You're a better man than you give yourself credit for. Only because you make me want to be. They kissed, soft and slow, and Lena let herself sink into the warmth of being wanted, being loved, being chosen by someone who'd seen all her broken pieces and decided she was worth putting back together. When they finally broke apart, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. Move in with me, he said, officially. Not as a guest or someone I'm protecting, but as my partner. Make this your home. Lena's heart stuttered. Raphael, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a couple months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I want you here, with me, building something that's ours. What about Jamie? He can stay as long as he wants, or take the apartment near campus. That's his choice. But you, I need you here. Need to wake up next to you, come home to you, build a life with you. Raphael's eyes held hers. What do you say? Lena thought about the apartment she'd been paying rent on, the life she'd been clinging to out of fear more than desire. Thought about what it would mean to let go of that safety net and commit fully to this strange, beautiful, terrifying relationship. Okay, she whispered. Yes, I'll stay. The smile that broke across Raphael's face was like dawn breaking, slow and warm and full of promise. Whoa. Moving in officially was less dramatic than Lena had expected. Most of her belongings fit in 3 boxes. She'd been living so lean for so long that there wasn't much to bring beyond clothes and a few books. Raphael cleared space in his closet without being asked, moved his things to make room for hers, and never once made her feel like she was intruding. Jamie decided to take the apartment near campus when fall semester started. He was nervous about living alone again, but excited too, and Lena was proud of him for taking the leap. You'll visit, right? He asked the day he moved out. Every week, Lena promised, and you're welcome here any time. This is still your home if you need it. I know, but I think it's time I figured out how to stand on my own. Jamie hugged her tight. Thank you. For everything. For keeping us alive when I couldn't help, for never giving up, for finding someone who loves you the way you deserve. Lena cried, because of course she did, and Raphael very diplomatically pretended he had urgent business elsewhere until she pulled herself together. After Jamie left, the mansion felt different, quieter, more intimate. It was just Lena and Raphael now, learning how to build a life together without the constant backdrop of crisis and danger. They fell into routines. Coffee together in the mornings before Raphael disappeared into meetings. Dinners where he told her sanitized versions of his day, and she shared stories about the online classes she'd started taking. Psychology, because she'd always been interested, and now she finally had the time and resources to pursue it. Evenings in the library or the conservatory, reading together in comfortable silence. It wasn't perfect. Raphael still had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping and reaching for weapons that weren't there. Lena still had moments of panic where she was convinced this was all too good to be true, that it would be ripped away without warning. But they learned each other's triggers and tells, learned how to comfort without smothering, how to give space without abandoning, how to love imperfectly but honestly. 3 months after Lena officially moved in, Raphael woke her before dawn and told her to get dressed. Where are we going? She mumbled, still half asleep. You'll see. Trust me. 20 minutes later, they were on the roof of the mansion, a space Lena hadn't even known existed. Raphael had set up a blanket and pillows, along with a thermos of coffee and pastries from her favorite bakery. What is this? Lena asked, settling beside him as the sky began to lighten. I wanted to watch the sunrise with you, the first one of the rest of our lives. It should have been cheesy, should have made her roll her eyes and tease him about being sentimental. But the look in his eyes was so earnest, so full of quiet hope, that Lena's throat went tight instead. They sat together as the city woke up around them, Raphael's arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. The sky bled from black to purple, to pink to gold, and Lena thought about how far they'd both come from that rainy night in the alley. "I never thought I'd have this," Raphael said quietly. "Someone to share sunrises with. Someone who makes me want to be better instead of just stronger." "I never thought I'd have someone who saw me as more than just what I could do for them," Lena replied. "Someone who loved me, not despite my broken pieces, but including them." Raphael turned to face her, and the tenderness in his expression made her chest ache. "I love you, Lena Hart. I love your strength, and your stubbornness, and the way you refuse to let me get away with my own bullshit. I love how you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. I love that you chose me when you could have chosen safety." "I love you too," Lena whispered. "I love that you're trying to be better every day, that you protect the people you care about with everything you have, that you gave me my life back and then asked me to share it with you." Raphael kissed her as the sun crested the horizon, bathing the city in golden light. And Lena thought about how love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours, whose damage made sense alongside your own scars. They'd both been broken, both been drowning. But somehow, in finding each other, they'd learned how to breathe again. When they finally pulled apart, Raphael took her hand and pressed something into her palm. Lena looked down to find a key, old-fashioned, ornate, clearly antique. "What's this?" "The key to the library. It used to be my sister's favorite room, and after she died, I locked it and couldn't bring myself to go back in." Raphael's voice was rough. "But you brought it back to life. You sat in there and studied and existed so fully that the ghost stopped haunting it. I want you to have it. Make it yours." Lena's eyes burned with tears. She knew what this meant, that Raphael was giving her not just a room, but a piece of his grief, a part of himself he'd kept locked away for 6 years. "Thank you," she managed. "No, thank you. For seeing me. For staying. For loving me when I'd forgotten I was capable of being loved." Raphael cupped her face in his hands. "You changed everything, Lena. You made me remember that survival isn't the same as living, and that maybe I deserved a chance at something more." "We both did," Lena said. "We both deserved more than just surviving." They stayed on the roof until the sun was high and bright, talking about Jamie's progress and Lena's classes and Raphael's plans to legitimize more of his business operations. They talked about the future tentatively, hopefully, like people who'd finally learned that maybe hope wasn't a luxury they couldn't afford. And when they finally went back inside, hand in hand, Lena realized something that made her smile. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't drowning, wasn't just surviving day to day with no room for anything beyond the next crisis. She was living, really, fully living, and she was loved by a man who'd moved heaven and earth to keep her safe, who'd given her choices when she'd forgotten she was allowed to have them, who looked at her like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. It wasn't a fairy tale. Their lives would never be simple or easy. Raphael's world would always carry risks, and Lena would always worry when he walked out the door. But they'd built something real in the midst of the chaos, a partnership based on honesty and trust, and the stubborn belief that they were both worth fighting for. That night, curled up in Raphael's arms, with the city lights glittering beyond the windows, Lena let herself believe in forever. Because sometimes the best love stories aren't about finding someone perfect. They're about finding someone who makes you want to be better, who sees your worst and chooses you anyway, who turns survival into living and loneliness into home. And Lena had finally, against all odds, found hers.